It's time for the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in to a brand new season of the North Idaho Prepcast, Season 3, Episode 1. My name is Brandon Baney, but the guy you really came to hear from is our North Idaho resident and expert, Mr. Ryan Scaggs. What's going on, Ryan?
What's up? Yeah, nobody came here to listen to me, but that's all good.
You had a LaCroix.
I did.
There you were sipping on. Let me see
Sipping
that bad boy.
10:45 in the morning, get a little limoncello in.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so for those of you that may not know, this is a weekly stop down of everything that is happening in Districts 1 and 2 in the state of Idaho, week in, week out. You might be thinking, how come District 2 doesn't have its own Prepcast or District 1 doesn't have its own? Well, they're combined in so many classifications. You know, District 1 and 2 are in the same league, and even if they're separate, they end up playing each other so often, it just made sense to put Districts 1 and 2 together. So if you're new to the Prepcast, welcome aboard. A lot of ways you can consume this bad boy. You can watch this Prepcast every single week on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel or Facebook page. And watching the video is super fun because you get little Easter eggs you're just not going to be able to pick up on if you're listening audio only. For example, every show we do, every time I intro Ryan, he's always taking a drink of something. That's what you saw with the LaCroix there just a few moments ago.
Funny story about the LaCroix too is that when you throw your own wedding, and you provide all the food and beverage and everything, nobody warns you how much you will have left over from said wedding. So we've got like 4 cases of LaCroix left, and then we have I think another 5 or 6 cases of water in the garage, and like a whole bunch of Capri Suns and a bunch of random stuff too. So yeah, the garage is well stocked at the Scaggs household.
Yeah, that's funny. That's super funny. Yeah, we're gonna get to the busy summer you've had in just a moment. So you can watch the video version of this Prepcast on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel or Facebook page. You can also consume this audio only as well at IdahoSports.com. Across the top of the homepage, you'll see a tab that says Prepcasts. From there's a little drop-down menu. You click on North Idaho Prepcast. Boom, the episode's right there. You can also subscribe and download this podcast wherever you download podcasts. Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher. I have an Android phone, so I use what's called Podcast Addict, but I download all the Prepcasts every single week on that platform. So a lot of different ways you can get this Prepcast week in, week out. But long story short, we want to shine the spotlight on all of the incredible young men and women that are in our North Idaho communities doing incredible things on the field, in the classroom. And so if you are a parent, a fan, a coach, a player, another student, and you're like, man, this is a really cool story that's happening and it's not getting any love or attention, send it in to us. My email address is brandon@idahosports.com. You can get in touch with Ryan on Twitter or X.
Yeah, I need to change that now that I realize that Elon went ahead and went changing things on me.
Well, it's funny though, because it's X, but it's still twitter.com. So yeah. But you can get at Ryan on Twitter /X/whatever at Idaho Game Night. That stands for North Idaho Game Night there. So that's what we're doing every week here on the Prepcast. We will be with you every single week from now until roughly the end of the school year. So welcome aboard for Season 3, Episode 1. For those that may not know, like I said, my name is Brandon Baney. I am from Montana originally. Grew up in western Montana, a little town called Stevensville, not too far from Missoula. From there, I've lived in Nebraska and Wyoming and finally made the journey over here to Idaho, where I lived in Pocatello for about 5 years. But this summer, I finally made the move to North Idaho. I live in Hayden now.
Like everyone else has, I guess, these days. But it's the new thing to do is move to North Idaho.
I'm part of the problem, aren't I?
I mean, you were from Idaho to Idaho, so I count that as a net zero. But
yeah,
some of the other ones, I mean, well, you have to be. I don't know. I don't want to alienate half of our listenership that's moved here from either California or Western Washington. So,
yeah, everything we say is in jest, of course. We're just having fun. My wife actually got transferred with her job up here, so that's why I moved. I work from home, so I can live anywhere basically in the state of Idaho and still do this job. But it was a really long process to move. It took like 8 months to sell our house. And so, but I'm finally here. This is the new digs, and I've got room to put cool memorabilia stuff behind me on the wall. So yeah, that's me. Ryan is North Idaho / Washington. You've split your time pretty evenly between the two, right?
Now that I kind of do the math, yeah, I'm pretty close to. Well, I mean, I was raised in Clarkston, Washington, so you can kind of confer what you will. I don't really think of myself as a Washingtonian. When you live in Clarkston, it's like you have to go through Idaho to go anywhere. So I mean, I was born in Boise too, so I can kind of think of counting my years in my life. I'm 50-50 between the two states, but I've lived in Idaho full time since 2009. So it's been a while.
Yes, and I will tell you, everybody that I've talked to that lived in Washington and now lives in Idaho, they said, I'm never living in Washington again.
Oh, that's my family is included, that they're looking for every way they can to get out. So, Idaho's a great place to live, and it's definitely got its benefits. Let's put it that way.
Yes. So you have experience coaching wrestling and football.
And tennis.
And tennis, of course. You've coached in Washington, but also here at Lakeland High School in the past, in Rathdrum. And so you're a good expert. You still got lots of friends and colleagues that are coaching. And so you're pretty plugged into the North Idaho scene, which is why you're our North Idaho expert. So
I've cut my teeth around the area, and growing up, we played in the old border league. Which I don't know if people are too familiar with. That was a few eons ago. I had my 20-year reunion like 2 weeks ago. So that's kind of a figment of my imagination, but something that happened that seems like forever. But that old border league was Clarkston, Lewiston, Moscow, the Coeur d'Alene schools, Sandpoint, Cheney, West Valley, and Colville, I believe, were in that conference. You got used to being on the road playing in that league, but that was a fun time. There's a lot of butt whoopings that you take back then too.
It builds character.
That's right.
It builds character. Yeah. So, and then on personal news, so I moved up here this summer, but you also had a big milestone this summer in your personal life, Ryan.
Yeah, I got married in July. Which I kind of alluded to at the beginning with talking about all the fun stuff of having extra LaCroix and everything. But my wife and I, Abby, who's the best cameraman that you can get with IdahoSports.com.
Camera woman,
I should say. Yes, sorry. So we ended up getting married in July, and we're living here in Coeur d'Alene, and it's awesome. So. It's been good. Married life has definitely been kind of a transition period, but it's been fun. So just looking forward to kind of settling down. It was funny. Everybody asks you, like, what do you want from being married? Like with the wedding and everything. I'm like, I just want to be married. Like, I want all the drama and the stress to go away and just live life. So word of the wise, I'll sound like Coach Leach out there, but if anybody's thinking about getting married, elope.
Oh, that's funny. And we ended up having our two big life events on the same day, right? You got married on July 15th, 16th, 15th, right? Yeah. And that is literally the day we were moving into our new house up here in North Idaho. So it was
sorry I didn't help you out there.
No. Hey, sorry I couldn't make it for the festivities. We were doing our own thing.
It's all good.
Yeah. But yeah, congratulations. That's so exciting. Yes. That's gonna be fun. We'll have to do some double dates.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, no, Abby's she's an awesome person, and she's all about what we do too, and so she's super supportive, and you'll see her at many of the events. If you see me there, she's usually hanging out nearby. And my son Owen, he's hanging around too. So it's always a good time to have family involved with what you do and be enthusiastic about what we do too.
Yeah, see, and it's funny because my wife is the opposite. She will stay home and watch the broadcast that I'm doing. So she's kind of like my tech support. I'll kind of text her as I'm getting going. And I'm like, hey, does everything look okay? Am I sounding all right? And she always, yeah, you're doing great. And so, but she supports that way. She gets to be in her, comfy clothes on the couch and support. That's how.
Yeah, Abby will go to the local stuff with me, but if it involves being on the road, nah, she ain't gonna be there unless there's we're down in Lewiston, so then we can get Fazzaris. So,
and that is not a paid advertisement, by the way.
That is not a paid advert. It should be if they want to sponsor us. I mean, I'm all for it, but if you're gonna go down to Lewiston, that's the reason to go.
We are always looking for great sponsors, because what we do here at IdahoSports.com, the podcasts, the written content that we do, the game broadcasts that we do, putting everybody's schedule and scores up on the site, that's all free. You go to a lot of media places these days or websites, and to get information, it's behind a paywall. We never ask you to pay for anything unless it's like an archive of a game that you want to have to keep forever. But generally speaking, 95% of what we offer on IdahoSports.com is free. And yet, we command hefty salaries, Scaggs. Yeah. And so, bills got to be paid and stuff. And so we can't do that without all of our great advertisers, not just in North Idaho, but statewide. So if you are a business and you like what we're doing and you're like, man, these guys, deserve a little extra, send an email to Logan at IdahoSports.com. He's our sales manager here. So
yeah. And it allows us to do more things for the kids, and more than paying our bills. It's more that it allows us to free up more resources to pursue those one-off stories, or maybe the events that don't necessarily get covered, like volleyball and softball and things like that too.
Absolutely. So that's kind of what we've been up to personally this summer, but it was a busy summer at IdahoSports.com as well. We hosted over the off season, Ryan, 3 separate roundtable discussions, kind of big State of the Union like topics that are coming to a head here in the state of Idaho. In June, we talked about classification sizes and a proposal that would have tweaked the enrollment number parameters to basically avoid 4A from becoming an extinct classification. So we talked about that in June. In July, we talked about player transfers, which we're used to up here, right? We get that Spokane to Coeur d'Alene pipeline and that, Clarkston to Lewiston pipeline. But
Lapway, you throw in all the other smaller schools, Genesee, Uniontown, you name it.
Right. And so we're kind of used to that, but now that there's school choice and parents can at any time put their kid in any school they want, it's going to change things a little bit for sure. That was
in District 3, that's for sure. Holy cow.
Yes. Yeah. I've heard rumors already about basketball season down there that I haven't been able to verify, but
let's just say the 2A has been rated by 4A pretty heavily already. So
and Coeur d'Alene, if they want to run it back in girls hoops, might have to take on a super team at one of the schools down there. That's all I'm gonna say about that. But
they got a super team of their own. They didn't have to recruit. They didn't have to recruit though. Let's be honest.
Yes, that's very true. And that's going to be fun when we get there. That was our July topic. And then in August, we just did this last week. We talked about state tournaments, using max preps. Can we make the formula better? Should we expand the state tournaments? Should we move locations? Should basketball always be in Boise? It was a really good conversation. You can go back and listen or watch any of those on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel and Facebook page. And if you didn't get a chance to catch them, I recommend you do, because with these roundtables, we brought on a voice from every part of the state. And we even had fans and coaches and parents from all corners of the state contributing to the conversation. It really was a statewide talk. So really important stuff.
Yeah, no, and they were awesome discussions. I mean, I got to be a part of at least one of them. The other 2 Family Matters kind of stepped in and didn't allow me to jump in, but especially the one last week, that I think the state tournament one is such a valuable discussion from the economy standpoint statewide. I mean, if Boise State can hold games in Eastern Idaho now, I mean, for basketball, why can't we move a classification or 2? I know that there's a ton of ties between communities, that there's smaller schools surrounding these bigger areas, that you'll get one kid that goes to say like a Coeur d'Alene high school, and then they have a cousin that plays at let's say like Lakeside of Plummer or something like that. And so when you split up state, families start to get fractured and have to go different directions. But we can't, curtail the entire state thing and cater to just a handful of people. I think that there's no reason that this stuff shouldn't be spread out statewide at this point, especially with the facilities that we have across the state of Idaho. And I know that I'm probably in an echo chamber with what was talked about, but you look at University of Idaho with that facility there with ICC Arena in Moscow. That's a gorgeous facility. Lewis and Clark State College has a great facility too for small school stuff. I mean, there's no reason 1A D2 couldn't play state at LCSE in Lewiston. I mean, I'm just, let's be brutally honest. You can move the 1As up north, and you already have the majority of the classifications, like the schools that qualify, play up north anyways. And people can't make the travel argument necessarily anymore. I know that they say Southern Idaho is more centralized than North Idaho, but look at the spring sports. Things move around down there. Fall sports, things move around up north and down south too. We can't use that argument anymore. I mean, we can't do anything about the geographical design of our state. We can't move our borders, but we can do what's in best interest for our kids and giving them a great experience. I mean, there's no reason a kid should play, 3 games at Caldwell High School hoping to play in one big venue when we have these venues across the state that are phenomenal facilities that could be used for every round. I mean, what are we doing? So that's kind of where I stand.
I really wish you had been on the round table with me, because I was the only guy in favor of like moving them out of Boise, and I was just getting browbeat by everybody on the panel. I walked away a sad, defeated man. I could have used some backup.
No, I would have thumped that drum hard, man. I think that, look at others. Everybody's like, well, that's just what we've done. And I'm like, look at the other states. I mean, outside of Oregon, because geographically centered, it's all on the west side. The state of Washington moves their classifications. I mean, the 3A, 4As are on the west side because that makes sense. 2As are in Yakima. 1As are in Yakima, Bs are in Spokane. Why can't we have a fractured state tournament too? I don't understand why everybody has to be playing in the Treasure Valley at one given weekend when we can boost the economy statewide. Why? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I could easily picture a world where, outside of football, because that's determined a little bit by, who actually makes it to the championship, but
Sure.
all the other sports where you're guaranteed to have representation from every area of the state, I could easily see splitting it. There's 6 classifications in any given year. In any given year, 2 are in North Idaho, 2 are in the Treasure Valley, 2 are in East Idaho, and
you rotate them. Yeah.
I don't know.
And I honestly, I look at the big classifications with 5A and 4A. I don't necessarily know if those need to rotate up north. Just with I mean, we could say let's make it fair, but I think you could easily rotate the 2 between the Treasure Valley and East Idaho. Like, that makes sense. I mean, if you're going to do 4A and 5A, I think leaving it south makes a little bit more sense in basketball. But I think the 3A, 2A, 1As, like, they can all go statewide, and I just look at that making more sense. But when you only have one school making the tournament from up north with 5A and one school in 4A, I don't know if it makes sense to host everything up north, even though the facilities are great. Don't get me wrong, but that's the one thing I think is, like, if you want to make a concession, I think that's the one that you make a concession on. But if you want to do it and just do them all and rotate them on a 3-year or like a 2-year schedule, do that. Like, I'm all for it. I'm all for moving them out of the Treasure Valley. I know that they get a good deal on using the Fort Idaho Center for those 2 weekends. Well, 3 if you count wrestling, but and wrestling's another one we can talk about. I know why it's not in Moscow, and it has nothing to do. It's about the Jazz Festival. It always has been, and it always will be.
I have heard that will be moving to a totally different part of the year.
Then there is no reason not to host that thing in the Kiwi Dome. There is no reason not to have state in Moscow.
There's already a group that's putting together the pitch for it.
So. Well, I know that there's money up north that's behind it. I mean, there is a lot of funding that would put forth to help making that happen. And you look at the hotels that have been added in the Lewiston, Clarkson, Moscow, Pullman area. There's facility space. I know that they need a few more options. But I mean, and if you look at just the drive from Coeur d'Alene, it's an hour and 10 minutes. I mean, if you have to really stay in Coeur d'Alene, you can. It's not going to kill you, but I know that they geographically love to stay within 45 minutes of Moscow. That's for sure.
Right. So that's all good stuff that we will talk about as we get into, the time to discuss it. But for the summer, the dog days of summer, it was good to have these off-season talks, and you can go back and watch those on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel or Facebook page. But now here we are, Scaggs. We are running out of room on the runway. We're cleared for liftoff. Regular season competition begins this weekend. We are rolling out the previews on our site, IdahoSports.com. We've got football previews for every single team in the state of Idaho. We've probably got about 80% of the previews written. If your favorite team, their preview hasn't been written yet, it's probably because your coach, hasn't responded to our questionnaire. If we're being honest, I mean, that's the biggest question I get from fans is like, how come you're not talking about our team? Well, I haven't heard from anybody about your team yet. But we're about 80% of the way there. We'll have them all in by the end of next week should be. We did our top 10 lists throughout the summer as well. We took the top 10 players at each position and put them on a list. And it was, kind of a collaborative effort. We asked a lot of different people their opinions on it from the IdahoSports.com team. And so we did offensive linemen, defensive linemen, special teams, running backs, linebackers, wide receivers, defensive backs, and then our most recent top 10 list that was released this week, top 10 quarterbacks.
So I've got my evil grin on because I know that there's so many people that are like grumbling that everybody's got an omission. Let's put it that way. The thing that I find hilarious is that some of the people that were omitted that will be there next year, and it's just like the rich get richer, that you kind of know about, like who's waiting in the wings and stuff like that. And I'm like, man, there's teams right now that could roll out 2 QBs and be totally fine. And we're not talking about the backup. And that's the part that's really funny with why I was kind of smirking a little bit. But those lists were great. And I mean, you look at North Idaho in particular, where we're at. I mean, I think we were pretty fairly represented on those lists. You could say that there's a few omissions here and there. I mean, maybe at the running back spot, there could be a guy or two missing or a piece that was put in the wrong place or whatever. But by and large, I think the representation up north is, I think, more than fair. And we're going to get guys that weren't on that list in the preseason. They're going to show up in big ways this year. And so, I mean, I look at, guys I'll use, for example, I think Hunter Garcia at Sandpoint, I think he's going to have a great season at quarterback. I really look at what they're going to do and the pieces that he's got around him they got athletes. I think that they didn't have last year. They have Max Frank back. But I think
top 10.
Yeah. Who's top
player,
10? Yeah. And should be top 5 at his position in the state. I mean, like I look at Max, he's a phenomenal athlete, but they may not have the names up front on the offensive line, but I think the pieces that they've got in the skill positions, they've got more team speed than they've had last year or in years past. That's no slight to like Parker Pettit because he was a phenomenal high school quarterback and he's going to do great things at MIT. But I think Hunter's going to do a pretty good job with that offense. They're going to cater to him pretty well. Sandpoint, I don't think is going to miss a beat too much within the IEL. They've got a little bit difficult schedule. In my opinion, I think that they've got a few tough games, mainly playing Post Falls right off the bat again, getting that game back on the schedule. But I look to them repeating. But there's going to be guys, I think, that kind of get left off that we're looking at, like, Lewiston's got a few guys that are in the fray on defense and, so a few guys that are going to be up front in the offensive line that I think are going to show up the Bengals. And I think it's going to be Post Falls and Lewiston in that 2-horse race in the IEL 5A. I really do look at that being Post Falls going to be good. I mean, people are saying like, oh, yeah, they were good last year. That was a one-trick pony. I'm looking back at what they've got coming back. That ain't no one-trick pony. They've got dudes back.
8 starters on offense. Hello.
Yeah, 8 starters on offense, and I think they've got like another 7 on defense.
Yeah.
I mean, they did graduate some dudes. Like, let's be real. I mean, you're not going to be able to replace guys like they lost, but year in and year out. But they've got some pieces coming back, like a different type of back in Tevin Burns, who came back stronger. I think he's faster this year, which is crazy because he was a burner last year. They're going to cater that offense really well with their quarterback and the receivers that they've got coming back, and Bowie and the other Cooper Craig in the secondary, who might be playing linebacker this year on the outside. I mean, that dude flies around the field. He's a name that I don't think a lot of people were talking about in the preseason, but I look at him, he's going to be a first team all conference, if not all state caliber player. for the Trojans. So there's a lot of dudes that are in the mix at the 5 and 4As that I think we could talk about for hours. But,
yes, already going on about it.
I've been licking my chops for this episode already, so yeah, I brought my A game.
yes, you have. I will say one quick point about the top 10 lists. You mentioned like Hunter Garcia from Sandpoint. If he's a first time starter, he's just not going to make our list because we have to go off of stats and
he started at wide receiver last year,
right? But in knowing so. It's hard to. There's always first year starters that are going to be, jump off the page, but it's hard for us to predict how that's going to go. We just use strict analysis from the year before, but all those top 10 lists are on the homepage, IdahoSports.com. And then next week, we're going to be rolling out statewide volleyball, boys soccer, girls soccer, cross country previews here between now and the end of August to get you caught up on all of those other great sports as well, because we're getting to it. Scaggs, the very first soccer matches of the year are on Friday. We've got a small sampling of football games. Do you know what the first athletic competition in North Idaho is going to be this year?
Athletic, I mean, it's not. I mean, I know Coeur d'Alene. Yeah, because they're going to be playing Mountain Time. It might be Coeur d'Alene at Rigby. If not that game, then it's going to be a soccer game, probably Friday afternoon. I would say Sandpoint playing first.
Close. Actually, yeah, you are correct. I saw a game at 1:00, but there's a game at noon on Friday, the 19th, Lake City at Sandpoint, boys soccer, noon showdown.
That's it. And that you talk about coming out of the chute, first game of the year. That's a heck of a match.
Yeah. That's a good competition right there.
Yeah.
I mean, we know what Sandpoint has done the last couple of years with Coach French and Coach
Lake
Jump.
City's been hanging in there too. I mean, they've been a really tough program also.
Yeah. And, both soccer programs really strong. Coach Baranski also at Sandpoint. I think Coach Baranski coaches the boys, and I think it's Coach French for the girls, or it's the other way. I always get it mixed up in my head. But either way, boys and girls soccer at both Sandpoint and Lake City, very strong. That will also be a girls matchup at 4:00 on Friday as well on the girls side. So yeah, boys soccer gets it started this weekend. We mentioned Lake City at Sandpoint at noon. You've got Bonners Ferry at Orofino on Friday at 1:00. Priest River is going to host Coeur d'Alene Charter, and Timberlake will be at St. Mary's. And then also Lewiston will be at McCall Donnelly, the 3A level there. That's in boys soccer. And then if we flip it to girls soccer here on this opening weekend, it's going to be a lot of the same matchups. So you've got Sandpoint, Lake City on Friday, Priest River hosting Coeur d'Alene Charter, Timberlake at St. Mary's as well on the girls side. And then you've got really a big marquee matchup in girls soccer. Lewiston is going down south from District 2. They're going to be at Owyhee on Friday, at Mountain View Saturday morning. This is a big early season road trip for the Bengal girls.
Which I know that they're high on their program this year. I think they returned quite a few players from last year's team. So it's going to be a big trip for Lewiston heading down south. Something I was thinking about too, like with the periphery sports, like golf, like being moved to the fall. Like the course conditions up here are going to be crazy. What are we going to see score wise? And looking at some of these other sports, I know that we've got previews coming up, but how low can they go? With fast greens, and then the fairways are actually in really good shape at most of the courses around here. It's going to be interesting to see how that golf season shakes up, because typically we've had some pretty competitive golfers up in North Idaho, and to see if we can continue that trend in the right direction would be interesting.
Yeah, I'm still getting used to the fall golf thing. I'll admit. Me too. So I think actually the very first competition of the season, Scaggs, actually happened yesterday. We're recording this on Wednesday, August 16th. We had golf yesterday, Tuesday the 15th, at Liberty Lake Golf Course, just across the border.
That's actually not a bad course. That's not a bad course.
Yeah. Coeur d'Alene took the team title on the boys' side. Trey Nip was your individual medalist as well. Sandpoint won the girls' competition. And your girls medalist was also from Sandpoint, Alexa Twinstra. So congratulations.
So
Coeur d'Alene Press with all that great info there.
Yeah. Shout out to Jason Elliott and Mark Nelke.
I just saw those two guys at the North Idaho media meeting with the IHSAA. So
cool.
Yeah. Right, shout out to Mark and Jason for sure.
Yeah.
I didn't know Jason lives in Wallace. Did you know that?
I didn't know that either. No,
yeah.
I didn't know that. Interesting. I learned something today.
Yeah. So Jason Elliott, great writer for the Coeur d'Alene Press, lives in Wallace. How did I know that? Because we were talking about the big football game on Friday at the University of Montana's Washington Grizzly Stadium, home of the Montana Grizzlies, and for the second year in a row, home to a neutral site opener between Coeur d'Alene and Rigby in football, because Jason will be covering the game. And I said, yeah, I'll see you there. I'm going to be broadcasting it for IdahoSports.com. He's going to be writing for the Coeur d'Alene Press. And he said, yeah, it's actually not that bad of a trip for me. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, I live in Wallace, so I'm already,
He's got to go over the hill. It's only like an hour. Hour and 15 minutes for him. That's not too bad.
I was like, oh, no, good for you. But this is a huge matchup, and it just has the feel of a big-time game. I think adding to it a little bit this year, I think you might see just some Missoula locals come check out the action, because Rigby's senior quarterback, Luke Flowers, committed to the Grizzlies. So I think you might just get some people that want to see this kid play.
Well, and then you got, guys on Coeur d'Alene's team being recruited in the Big Sky heavily as well. So, Shea Robertson and the like. So like Coeur d'Alene on defense, I look at that. It's going to be the battle of, the offense is going to have to show up this year for the Vikings. They struggled with points last year. They had big problems scoring. They're going to have to be able to get something moving on the offensive side of the ball. We know that defense can play. I mean, they've got dudes in the box. Ivankovic up front is a dude. They play really hard in that front seven. The secondary, I think, could be tested a little bit. I know that they've got a couple of decent players coming back on the back end of that defense, but that front seven, I think, is as good as anybody in the state. I mean, if we're going to look at, top to bottom of that lineup, but offensively, excuse me, they got struggles. And, I don't know if we brought in off the JVs this last in the offseason or anybody moving in that's going to move that needle offensively. But and I don't want to poo-poo on the Vikings so much, but they got to be able to score some points this year if they're going to be in ball games. That defense is going to give them chances, but they've got to be able to put up more than 13 points a game.
Yeah, that was the problem last year was I think just inconsistency in general. And I know this is a Vikings program that really has prided itself on the details in years past. But as you mentioned, 13 points per game scored. They only allowed 22 points per game. And when you look at the top three teams in the league last year, Post Falls only allowed 19 points per game. Lewiston allowed 22. Coeur d'Alene allowed 22. Points could be at a premium this year. And so it really is going to come down to which team can be kind of the most consistent.
Yeah, and you can't, you keep going 3 and out. And that's what I think, let's go back to that Post Falls Coeur d'Alene game last year. Post Falls won that game because they had more possessions. That's the only reason they won that game. You're going 3 and out and you just keep giving possessions over. The law of averages isn't going to be playing in your favor. And let's be honest, that Post Falls team, I mean, they played super inspired in that game last year and just absolutely blew the doors off of him in the second half. But, that Vikings team, if they're going to want to make a play for a playoff bid, they're going to have to improve that offense and pretty substantially this year. And that's a big test week 1 playing Rigby. I mean, Rigby's Rigby. They reload. They're one of the bigger schools in the state of Idaho. And, they got Luke Flowers on offense and they got a whole, litany of skill players around him. That Rigby team is deep and, they're going to be pushing, their hopes for a state championship. I know that, another rival of theirs, Highland, is going to be, one of the hopes for a state championship as well, but in the 5A ranks, but that's a good test week, 0 week. That's going to be a big game.
I mean, Rigby is the creme de la creme. In the last 4 years, the Trojans have gone 42-5 with 3 championships, and they've played for 4 in all 4 years. So, I mean, this is the team. This is going to be a fantastic matchup regardless. Just the atmosphere is going to be incredible. You can tune into that game with yours truly Friday night, 7:00 Mountain. So that's 6 p.m. Pacific time on IdahoSports.com. Totally live, totally free. So
No, that's awesome,
fun.
and looking forward to catching your broadcast. It's going to be a great game, and get to watch, like I said, Shea Robertson, Camden DeGraw, those guys for the Vikings. I know that they're looking for big years from them, and then maybe they get involved on the offensive side of the ball too. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, Shea Robertson's great player on offense too.
Yeah.
I think people forget that sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay, other games happening in week 0 for the third year in a row. Lakeland and Preston are meeting in Montana for a neutral site game. They're going to play at Montana Tech University in Butte, America. Alumni Coliseum is what it's called. Preston won the matchup 2 years ago, 7-6. Lakeland pitches a 28-0 shutout this year, and I kind of lean Lakeland again here in the third game of the series.
The question mark for the Hawks is going to be the quarterback play this year. How do they replace what they Lautzenheiser and everybody company last year, and the backfield that they had with him, and Cornish, who actually saw, side note, cool picture of John Cornish took his oath with the U.S. Marine Corps.
Cool.
Which is awesome. I saw a picture of that was posted, I believe it was yesterday or the day before yesterday. His mom put that online, which is pretty awesome. So congrats and thanks to him for, wanting to serve our country. But yeah, with Lakeland, showing up, it's going to be interesting. I know that they've got some skill players that are going to be back. We obviously know the kicking game is going to be huge with Forsman, who signed with the University of Idaho in the offseason. But what can they do up front with that offensive line? They had, graduated a few big pieces from that line, but quarterback play is going to be at a premium, I think, for Lakeland coming up this year. Obviously, you don't have to do too much with that type of offense. If you're running a power I, you just got to be able to game manage and not give up turnovers. But we'll see how things get put together for Lakeland. I look at them finishing second in their conference. I don't know much about Preston. I know that they had a player that they were really high on last year, but I don't know if he moved out or I can't remember if he graduated or not. He played quarterback last year, but I give Lakeland probably the edge a little bit just because I know defensively they play really well on that back end, but they could have some struggles throughout the season just trying to get some continuity, within their offense.
Yeah, I will say for Preston, that QB is back. Owen Judd is his name. And they got, 4 or 5 guys that play on that basketball team that's so good every year at Preston. They all decided not to play football last year, but the coach got them to come out for football again this year. So they're adding, 4 or 5 bona fide athletes from the basketball team to that football squad. So it'll be interesting for sure. And then we've got 2 8-man games this week as well, Skaggs. North Star League ain't wasting any time. Let's get to it. Mullen St. Regis going to travel to Clark Fork. Wallace headed to Kootenai. That's 4 of the 5 teams in the league duking it out week 0.
Yeah, and you got number 1 versus number 2 in the preseason. Like coaches poll in their conference going to play each other week 0. Like, let's go. So 2 teams, I think, with really high playoff aspirations too, between Mullen St. Regis and Clark Fork. So it should be, an interesting 0-week game and a good kind of test to see how the rest of that season is going to go for both squads.
Yeah, Mullen St. Regis lost, of course, a 4-year starter at quarterback. They do return a pretty good running back, so they might run the ball a little more than we're used to seeing. Clark Fork's got a new coach, Patrick Young, former Clark Fork player. Back in the day was a really good one for the Wampus Cats, and now he's back coaching his alma mater. And they bring back a lot of good players. Chase San Roman is going to be a senior. Ethan Howard is going to be a senior. Cole San Roman is going to be a senior. So all these guys that they had last year are ready. I think Clark Fork says enough of this Mullen St. Regis co-op thing. Yeah. It's time for us to get the conference back under control. And I really do think the gap is going to be really close between these 2 teams.
Yeah, I really do. And I look at them at the top of the conference for sure. I know that Lakeside might, surprise a few folks depending on who they can get out with their numbers and everything. Wallace has, historically been a tough out for some of these teams, depending on what they show up on Friday nights. But Kootenai's been, obviously we know what's happened with that program and how they're trying to rebuild and come back from the ashes, which is, good to see them fielding a team again this year. So it'll be a good conference. I really look at that schedule and, for both these teams that, there could be a few tests along the way, but it'd be interesting. I really look at Clark Fork and what they bring. They could they could get a playoff win this year too if the schedule works out right for them. That would be huge for that program to get a first week playoff win for the Wampus Cats and maybe find themselves playing on a second Saturday.
Yeah, they hosted last year what is believed to be the first playoff game in school history. Mm-hmm. We were there for Idaho Sports.com, not you and me, but IdahoSports.com was there covering it. So, yeah, it was an exciting time for the Wampus Cats for sure. Wallace has 10 incoming freshmen that they're going to be leaning on. So that's going to be interesting to see, too, with Wallace. Yeah. They'll start with Kootenai, a team that just needs more bodies, period.
Yeah.
For the Warriors. But yeah, should be a good opening weekend of football. And we will be back again next week to break down what we saw, preview the other sports that are starting up, Scaggs. And are you ready for the 7-month sprint? Actually, the 9-month sprint here.
Yeah, it's a lot of Wednesday mid-morning shows for us, so too. But and a lot of Friday late nights too.
Yes. Wouldn't trade it for anything in the world though. So
yeah. My favorite time of year, man. I love fall in North Idaho and just the mix of football and being around, the kids and the families again. And it's cool. The more years you do this, the more people you get to know along the way and the better relationships you build. And it's fun. You show up in a random game at Bonner's Ferry and it's like, oh yeah, hey, we talked like 3 years ago. And it's like, oh, hey, how are you doing? Like, type of stuff. But they sure know a lot about us because of the show. But it's like, we may not know a lot about you, but we're certainly willing to talk to everybody and anybody and just get to know people around the area. It's a ton of fun. And hopefully we get a chance to get down to a game in Kendrick too, because I know that what they've done building that new stadium down there, I'm super stoked to see all that new, the locker rooms and the new press box and everything else down there. I'm super excited with what Coach Hobart and the community down at Kendrick's done. That's going to be I'm telling you, one of the better environments for small school football in the state of Idaho with what they got going on down there in Kendrick.
Well, we will be at Kendrick for a couple of games this year on IdahoSports.com. It's going to be really exciting. And starting with, I think their season opener next week. So
sweet.
Yeah, we're going to be there.
Let's go.
If you want to see the full schedule of games that we're going to be broadcasting this year on IdahoSports.com, you can find that on the homepage. Just click on the game streams tab and it's all right there. But for week 0, one big one, Coeur d'Alene, Rigby in Missoula on IdahoSports.com. Do not miss it. Friday night, 6:00 Pacific time. So for Ryan Scaggs, I'm Brandon Baney. Episode 1, Season 3 in the books of the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.